Hello everyone. Today our guest is Simone Mink, a digital transformation leader with over 15 years of experience in software development and digital innovation. Simone is currently the product operations lead at Mendix, a Siemens company, and her focus is on making tech more accessible for everyone, especially women and neurodivergent individuals. Welcome to Lex Woodley Interviews. Simone, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Tell me a few things about yourself.
All right. Well, you already know my name, Simone Mink. That's my last name. I am a operations lead at Mendix, a low-code company. I have about 15 years of experience in the software tech industry. We can talk about that later for sure. And other than that, I love singing. I have a band. I play cello. I try to exercise and maintain a social life. And I'm a cat mom.
Wow. Lovely things. But let's go into digital transformation.
Yes.
Yeah. What inspired you to pursue a career in digital transformation?
I sort of rolled into tech. I graduated at Rotterdam Zoo. My thesis was on digitalization of education in the zoo, and I hadn't done anything with software before that. And through that thesis, I landed my first role at a tech company, which was as a web designer at first. And then on the job, like a month in, Niels, my manager at the time, asked me, "Do you want to learn how to code as well?" I was like, "Sure. Why not?" So I became a software engineer, learned on the job. Like I said, I've been in tech for about 15 years now. And I spent about a third of that as what I would now call a high coder. So really software engineering. And then I moved to low code. So to Mendix, a low code platform. And I spent about a third again as a technical trainer. So teaching people how to work with our platform, how to build software with low code. And then after that time, I thought, well, how can I leverage all that I know, but help Mendix transform our business? There was a need for digitalization in our own core, like legal, HR, whatnot. And that's my first, entry into digital transformation at that point. And that's what I've been doing the past 5 years. And a couple of days ago, actually, I made the switch to product operations, a different field.
Well, congratulations.
Again. Thank you. Thank you.
So can you share what you would say are the key highlights and achievements in the digital transformation for you?
So two things that stand out for me. One is, that was a personal highlight because I was just geeked out. I got to do a keynote at the Red Bull Racing headquarters on digital transformation. I'm a huge Formula One fan. And as a Dutch person, of course, you support Red Bull, Max Verstappen. And to stand there on stage surrounded by all those cars and delivering a keynote in front of, 100 something people was absolutely amazing. I think another highlight for me or an achievement is I created, together with some peers, of course, a masterclass on digital transformation for Mendix. And that is going to be, going live on our Academy website anytime now. So that's another one that I'm really proud of, especially because it's going to be there, for as long as the company will exist. So that's a good legacy.
Forever.
Yeah, forever.
Yes.
Let's just go with forever. Yeah.
And what challenges have you faced until now in your career?
Well, several. I think as a woman in tech, of course, there are challenges, but also just learning software without having that background of a formal education. So there's always like that gut feeling that you know that something is right, but you lack the vocabulary basically to have the right conversations with people. And that's another thing that I'm running into now, or have run into in the past year or so, is how do you have the right conversations with people at C-level? Like, what is something that occupies the CIO's mind? And that's one of the reasons that I also did an Oxford studies on executive leadership, finance, and strategy, to arm myself with the right vocabulary, because it matters. Like, speaking someone's language helps when you have to do business with them.
Yeah. Digital transformation, that is what we dove into it, but explain what it is.
It's a buzzword.
Yeah, a buzzword.
It's a buzzword, yeah.
Meaning?
I always try to explain it as simplistic as possible. So think about companies need to transform their operating model constantly, right? The market is always evolving. The world is evolving. And if you want to stay ahead of the curve, you have to transform your business to stay relevant. And that also implies for your technology. And so that's where it becomes digital transformation. How do you use technology to keep your company, your organization relevant? And it could be something as small as, we've always done this in Excel or on paper, even, hopefully not anymore. And digitizing that process, maybe putting some automation in place, to really big business applications that truly transform how you do your business, how you communicate with your customers, maybe putting self-service in place. I always like to think a little bit, it's not necessarily digital transformation, but more digital disruption. Also the examples of an Uber, for example, or an Airbnb that have completely disrupted a market by going digital, forcing other companies to follow suit, or you go out of business. So it's very interesting. It's a very wide field, but in a nutshell, it is transforming how you operate your business through technology.
And that would mean even to the smallest part?
Yeah. Even just if I think back to something we did at Mendix, we used to have an order process, for example, that people would just fill out in an Excel sheet, right? We need that. And making that process digital in an application means you can pre-fill certain fields because you have that customer data in your Salesforce. So that's a couple of steps less. Then automatically pushing it through the right workflow of getting it by legal, getting it by whomever needs to sign off of that, which would normally be a couple of emails back and forth. And now it's an application that automatically sends it out and notifies you when it's done. Maybe sends reminders automatically as well if people aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. And those are just little things that can have enormous impact on efficiency, basically.
What are the main components or areas of focus within digital transformation?
So we developed our Mendix digital execution practice that I can tell you a little bit more about. But I think usually companies go it's all about technology. Right. And that's not the case. There's a whole change management process around it. And what we see is that there's a McKinsey research that states these numbers, is that only around 16% of digital transformation efforts are successful. And this is a self-assessment. So this is companies going, we tried, we failed. That's 84% failing. That's a large number. More recent number from Boston Consultancy Group suggests 30% is successful, but that's still a big group that is failing. And we know that is because companies have an inability to what we call bridge the execution gap for change. That's the way Gartner puts it. How I like to say that is companies have ideas. They know what they need to change. They just don't know how. They lack the skills to do it. And it's very tempting to go just in with tech, right? That's so tech. But there's so much more that comes into play. So that's where our methodology helps out. And it revolves around 5 Ps. So that is portfolio, people, process, platform, and promotion.
Can you give 1 or 2 examples of the 5 Ps?
Of course. So we'll take portfolio, for example. So it's very tempting to go, you're starting out with this new project, right? And there's challenges in the organization and you want to, make a big impact. So you go for something that's quite complicated or that a lot of people are going to focus on, are going to see. And then you start working, you start building, doesn't go as fast as you hope maybe. You run into a couple of roadblocks, there's a learning curve. And before you know it, you are 6 months, 9 months down the line. And this is with low code, with traditional coding, it would be even much longer before you get to a success. What you want to do is start small, grab something that is not too complicated and that you can build in, let's say, a month. And then you can have a moment of success that you can celebrate with your company, which is the promotion P. That's really, really important to communicate your successes back, to build that trust in what you're doing and to get people excited about it. So you do that. You do that 2 or 3 times, a small app, before you start tackling the larger problems, because it helps you build up the skills you need in your team to work with this new technology. It builds that trust in the organization and you gain momentum. So that's the portfolio. People speaks for itself, right? You have different roles involved. People need to be enabled and trained on new technology. People hate change to begin with. Like, no one likes change, except maybe me. I love change. Yeah, sorry. But usually people don't like change, so you need to work them a little bit to get them to have a change appetite. And another one that I think is really important, and I already mentioned it briefly, is that promotion. And people underestimate the importance of that. And usually IT people aren't too good at it. Like, it doesn't come naturally to tech people somehow to go, look at what I did. No, we just, like, we fix something and we go straight on to the next thing to fix. But to build that credibility within the organization, to get that, well, executive sponsoring, the buy-in from your leadership that what you are doing is actually worth the investment, to get people around you to go with that change, to be happy with what you're doing, even if that means that they need to start working in a different system. Promotion is really important to build that.
So people, promotion, portfolio, one more P.
Platform.
All right.
So with especially with digital transformation, right? Companies usually already have a full tech stack. Right? There is full tech stack. There is already a lot of technology in most organizations. We rarely ever come across what we call a greenfield situation, where it's just, do whatever you want because there is no other tech that we need to take into consideration. Usually it's brownfield. So this is where you really need to start thinking about, how do these systems communicate with each other? What's my architecture? Which systems am I gonna extend upon? There's a thing we call keep the core clean. So if you have a big system like a Salesforce, for example, you could do all kinds of adaptations in that system, or you could build a layer on top of it so your Salesforce stays nice and clean, and your customization layer is done with low code, for example, which is much easier to change. So that's, little decisions or big decisions that companies need to make, how the tech stack fits together. And then if I can plug my company a little bit, the good thing of a low-code platform like Mendix is that we play really nicely with other platforms or with other tech. That's like one of our core strengths. So whatever tech we need to integrate with, bring it on. We can build a connector and we've got you covered.
I feel bad if we single out the last P then. Let's go with the last P, an example.
Process, agile. Working agile. I cannot believe that this day and age, not the whole world works agile yet, but it is really a thing. People still work waterfall. But in general, process is building that repeatable recipe for success. So once you have built those first apps, there's a couple of things that you're doing or that your team is doing that works. Document that, capture that into a process so it becomes something that you can do again and again and again and better each time.
The 5 Ps.
The 5 Ps.
What are the current trends in digital transformation, you would say?
Of course, low code is a big one. I had to look this one up real quickly this morning just to make sure that I gave you the right number. But Gartner has predicted that by 2026, 75% of software will be built using low code. I would love if all of that 75% was with Mendix. Of course, this is not the case. There are multiple low-code and no-code solutions out there, but that market is growing so much faster than we even thought was possible. I've been in this space for almost 10 years than we thought 10 years ago. So that's good. Of course, there's things like hyper-automation, AI. AI is a really, really big thing. Everyone's jumping on AI right now. And I think one of the consequences of AI is a renewed focus on data privacy and also sustainability.
You've mentioned a few, words, terms. Just in case not everybody knows what they mean, could you explain the differences between low code, high code, no code, And then I'll come to the other ones.
Yes, of course. So high code is the traditional coding, right? This is your software engineer that is writing code. It's actually typing in whatever syntax. Like when I was a software engineer, I used PHP. Some people will hate me for this. They do not approve of PHP. There's different, it's almost like religion. Like when you use one syntax versus another, it's like they don't see eye to eye. Like there's very strong opinions about which syntaxes should be used in the coding world. But coding, like high code is actually writing software. So typing thousands of lines of code to build something. Low code is an abstraction layer on that where it's much more visual. So you could almost think of it as Lego, where you have building blocks that you can combine together and you don't need to know how to write code anymore to build your applications. Now, what's the difference between low code and no code is no code is pretty much the same as with the Lego building blocks. But with low code, you still have the option to write code if you want. So there's an extensibility factor there that if you do know how to code, you can build your own logic, your own extensions, your own widgets, modules, whatever, to customize it to whatever you need.
I would like you to explain a few terms. And then I said first the no code, low code, high code. And I think you mentioned artificial intelligence.
Hyperautomation, artificial intelligence.
So let me ask you about that.
Yeah. So we are more and more automating everything around us, right? And there's different technologies that you can use for that. RPA, AI, again, comes into play there. But more and more organizations are trying to automate as much of their process as they can. And this, again, like ties back into low code, because what you actually see happening is that because of this drive for automation and that focus on that there is not enough people to actually build the automation that is requested. And thus this directly feeds into that growth of low code space, because that we like to call democratizing software development, like making that accessible for people that don't know how to code, which means that people that have never written a line of code before can start automating their own work processes, can start working on that automation capability.
Now, can you give some case studies regarding digital transformation and that you have been involved with?
Of course. So we have a couple of customer stories. Like Siemens is a really big example. Like they built, close to 1,000 applications with Mendix. There's the municipality of Rotterdam, a Nexus. There's loads of examples. If people want to know more, I would just point them to our customer stories page. What I actually want to talk about is a project that is really dear to me because it's my baby, and that's Empath. And Empath is an employee experience suite that I thought of during COVID. So I'm going to take you back in time a little bit. It's 4 or 5 years ago. Like I forget the exact timeline here. But we hit hypergrowth at Mendix. So we were hiring or intended to hire 400 people in 1 year. This was a really big number. We were basically doubling our organization in a year's time. So that's a massive increase. And during that time, COVID hits. So all of these people are being onboarded completely virtually. Like some of them only met their colleagues physically like a year after they joined the company. And during this time, I thought there must be something that we can do to make this better, to improve this employee experience. And how about we use our own technology to do that? So that is how I thought of Empath, which stands for empathy, the employee's path. And I pitched that idea to our MT. I said, how about we build this? We could even sell this potentially. And they said, well, Simone, why don't you come to our people and culture organization and do it? So I accepted the role of head of HR technology and started building out this employee experience suite, which started with a hiring experience, which I would love to tell you more about, but just to keep it a little bit short, it was a portal where if you were applying for a job at Mendix, you could see exactly what the process was. So how many stages, who you're going to be interviewing with, what the interview is going to be about, and to really give the, future new hire, the applicants, a sense of control over their application journey. And then the second app we built was an onboarding app. So I think everyone can relate to this. You apply for a job, you get the job, you sign your contract, and then there is this, depending of where you are in the world, if you're in America, it's maybe just 2 weeks. In the Netherlands, it could be 2 months before you actually start working at the job. And usually in that time in between, it's like this black hole of silence. So we built the onboarding app to have a regular cadence of contact with those people to already share the most important values and information about our organization, introduce them to their manager, to their team, and to have them feel like they were finding this new home in this organization before day one even started.
Impressive.
Thanks. Yeah, I am very proud of it.
What would you say are the most common obstacles for companies when it comes to digital transformation?
I think that relates back to what we discussed earlier, that change management component, that people just really underestimate the effort it takes outside of just introducing technology to do that successfully. And upskilling, training people, and depending on what the market is like at the moment for talent, like the war on talent is real. Finding talent is always a struggle, especially if there's a new upcoming technology, right? It doesn't even have to be low code. It could be anything, but anything that's new and upcoming, it's going to be difficult to find the right people with the right skill level to help you meet your goals. So really building a strong strategy around hiring, but mostly also training up people. I always get really excited about companies that have a trainee program, for example, where they get fresh grads and they take them on for 6 months or a year and they teach them the ropes. And I think that's, first of all, a very important thing to do, to give those young talents a chance. I mean, everyone knows those, oh, you need to have 5-year experience in this. Just give people a chance. I really like that. But it also gives you the opportunity to really skill people the way you need them to be skilled. And yeah, so I would encourage companies to look at your own training strategy.
Can you tell us about other opportunities for companies in the future?
Not necessarily for the future. What I would encourage companies to do as well is, before you get started with digital transformation and like get running, is focus on your vision. So really have a reflective moment where you look, what is our organizational strategy and how does a digital transformation strategy tie into that? So how can digitalization help us achieve our organizational goals? And with that vision, then start shaping your digital transformation strategy instead of just like, we have an idea, let's run. No, pause and think for a second and take that moment.
How would you see the world in 5 to 10 years with a digital transformation going?
That's a really, really difficult question. I wish I knew, because then I would be very rich in 5 or 10 years from now.
How would you hope it would look like?
Let's make that a more personal one. I would hope it's a more inclusive space. So apart from what we're doing with technology and where we are in terms of AI or industrial edge or whatever, I think we have a lot of ground to gain, to win, however you say that, in terms of inclusivity. And I would hope that 10 years from now, there are more female leaders in tech and more women leading the charge of digital transformation.
What has been your experience as a woman in this field?
It's not always easy. I had a conversation with a male colleague, a couple of weeks ago. That feeling of the minute you step into a room, you get taken seriously. I spent the first 10 minutes proving that I should be taken seriously. It's not a given, and there is still a lot of. It's getting better, but there still is sexism or underestimating women. I've had instances where there were conversations about tech where a male peer of mine who has no technical experience, he has a lot of strategic knowledge, but no tech knowledge per se. And we were talking about technology. We're talking about Mendix. And he was listened to more than I was. And whenever I raised this with people in our organization and I use this example, everyone goes, what? They were listening to him? Why? We all know that you know this. So yeah, well, there you have it. And of course, it's not all doom and gloom, right? I mean, the tech world is an amazing space to be in. There's a lot of good things happening, but we're not there yet. There's not enough female leadership and diversity in general. I think back to this example, there are more CEOs, and this is just in general about business, right? But there are more CEOs named Peter than there are female CEOs. And there was a time in an organization where there were more people named Simone than there were Black people in the organization, right? And that's also not okay. So we have a lot to do just for diversity in general, and it's really important.
How do you think that gender diversity impacts innovation and transformation in technology?
It's incredibly important. So we know that diverse minds, and that it comes from having a different background, whether that's gender or whether that's ethnical or whatever, you will have a different view on things. So the more homogenous a group is, the more groupthink you get, the more challenging innovation becomes, because everyone thinks the exact same way. Then there's no one challenging the status quo. Whereas if you bring in diverse minds from whatever angle that is, you're going to get different flavors of how that person sees the world and the experiences that they bring with them. And just through those different lenses, that inherently creates an environment for innovation. So yeah, I think it's incredibly important to have diverse teams.
What advice would you give women looking into entering this field of digital transformation?
Just do it. It's a really good space to be in. Tech in general is, if that's your passion, then go for it. If tech is not your thing, then don't. But if tech is your passion, go for it. Be strategic. There are rules, unwritten rules in society that, if you think about it, like, society was shaped very much by a certain group of people, right? They also established the rules. They know these rules inherently. For a woman, the rules are naturally different. We have learned different rules in our upbringing. If you want to be successful, you need to learn how to play by those other rules. And this is not my wisdom. This comes from, a program that I am a part of, Stratego for Women. And I think they have like this amazing methodology for women. But one of the examples I could use is, that's important for me. The first no is not a real no. Like, every man will go, that's when the negotiation starts, after that first no. And that is really something that I think a lot of women, for example, struggle with. So, and it doesn't matter if that's salary or project discussions or whatever, but you need to know these things. You need to push past your comfort zone, maybe, or push yourself out of your comfort zone to be successful.
Are there any resources or networks you recommend for professional growth, for strategic thinking, as the examples that you just gave?
Yeah, so the In Touch, that's the company behind Stratego for Women. Definitely recommend looking into that. For women that have or are currently on maternity leave, for example, and I am not a mother, but I have been told, I will keep it at that some women find it difficult to come back into the organization after giving birth. And I don't want to try and understand this, even because I cannot, because I am not a mother. But for those women, I would recommend Upfront, which is an organization that really builds, and I've done one of their programs, female confidence in women, being visible. And they have a special program for women in maternity leave. So that's why I say for mothers. For women in the low-code space, I have this little badge right here, the low-code ladies. Low-code ladies. So this is a community for women in the low-code space, and it's platform agnostic, which is really nice, because usually we have Mendix, we have our competitors, right? And well, I wouldn't say we're at each other's throats, but we're definitely not friends in the business sense, right? The low-code ladies community has all these platforms in there, and all women just working together to uplift women in the tech space and to create a safe space and also inspire more women to take on low code as their entry into tech. And a final one for anyone that's in the AI field. So there is a network, Women in AI. I'm actually a mentor in that program. And it doesn't necessarily have to be super technical. Like, for example, I don't know that much about AI from a technical perspective, but from a strategic perspective and how you handle certain conversations in the organization, right? That's why I'm a mentor. But that's also a network that I would absolutely recommend looking into.
What is a neurodivergent individual?
It's another tough question. You have a lot of difficult questions for me. I wouldn't be able to describe the neurodivergent individual. And I think that is also the gist of it, right? Like, neurodivergent means that your brain just works a little bit differently than someone who has a neurotypical brain. For example, if I look at myself, I have ADHD. I am super open about that. It just means that I can get very excited about things, can get hyper focused on things. So I'm either really distracted, or easily distracted if something doesn't grasp my attention because I don't find it interesting, or I'm 200% in, and then I'm way more efficient than a neurotypical person would be. Autism spectrum disorder is also, for example, a type of neurodivergency, dyslexia. There's so many different ways of being neurodivergent that describing the neurodivergent individual is really an impossible task, apart from saying our brains just work a little bit differently than yours.
What strategies or approaches do you find most helpful or effective when leading neurodivergent individuals?
There's a lot of research that still needs to be done in what creates a environment for neurodivergent people to thrive in. I cannot say too much about this yet because it's not certain yet, but we are looking into participating in a study for neurodivergence on the work floor, but this still needs to be approved from a subsidy standpoint. So yeah, hopefully this happens, and then we will be involved in co-creating training materials around how to work better with neurodivergent individuals. But I think in general, it's about inclusivity, so neuro-inclusivity, which also is a benefit for neurotypical people. And what I like to do, I'm part of our neurodiversity employee resource group at Mendix. So that's 3 people that try to make Mendix a better place for our neurodivergent people. And one thing that we like to do with each other is do battery checks. How's your battery today? How are you feeling? Are you at 20%? Are you at 80%? How much can you handle today? Or do we need to let you sit this one out a little bit? And this is something that I think would be a very good practice for people in general. This isn't just for neurodivergent people. They need it a little bit more maybe than neurotypical people. But this would be a great practice to just have for everyone.
How often would that be good to do?
Before you have a difficult conversation, maybe before you ask someone if they can take on a task. Maybe that can wait until tomorrow, that task, right? Just checking in hey, where's your brain at? Are you at 80? Fine, then you can handle this extra workload right now. If you're at 20, it can wait till tomorrow.
What if someone says that they are at 20% all the time?
That's a difficult question. I think that goes beyond the help that maybe a leader can give at that point. I think then as a leader, you would start looking at how can we support someone with actual care. The burnout is a very real thing that goes for neurotypical people, but there's also a thing called ADHD or autism burnout, because it is both ADHD and autism I don't like calling it a disorder. It's labeled as a disorder. It feels so negative to say it as such, but where people have difficulty processing stimuli. So there's a lot of information always shooting into your brain, and both ADHD and autistic people struggle with processing that information load. They struggle in different ways, but it is a challenge. So they are prone to burnout because of that, because that brain is always just so active. So if someone says, I'm always at a 20, see how you can support them better.
What are key messages or insights that you would like to share about digital transformation?
Do it before it's too late, but do it well. So approach it strategically. Think about your vision, what you want to achieve, and then look at what this means for your organization beyond the technology. And really look up our digital execution practice, for example, or change management in general, but apply proper change management processes.
How can people follow your work and connect with you?
People can always connect with me on LinkedIn. I think my official LinkedIn handle is Simone Mink Digital Transformation, but I'm not sure. But you can find me on LinkedIn. I share a lot of resources there about digital transformation. Of course, now I'm switching into product operations. I'll probably start talking about that a little bit more. But in my heart, I will always be a digital transformation evangelist. So I'll always keep talking about it. Yeah, and that's it.